With commentary and analysis on our hometown teams, this is the Bucky and Sully Show. Presented by Dave's Christmas Wonderland. 2 locations, Union Road, Cheektowaga, and Transit Road, Williamsville. Now, from the WBBZ-TV studio, here are Buffalo News sports columnists Bucky Gleason and Jerry Sullivan.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Bucky and Sully Show. I'm Bucky Gleason. This is Jerry Sullivan. He's already tapping his fingers because he's waiting for me to pay him the $20 from the bet of last week on the NCAA Championship,
fans are very happy.
of which I am toast. Not only did I finish behind him in the pool, I also picked Kentucky 2-1 odds against Wisconsin.
I explained it very well in the last show. I thought Kentucky would win too, but a 2-1 bet in that situation was what's called a smart bet. I took the smart bet.
There are no smart bets.
Apparently there are, man.
Hey, listen, when you look at, I found myself, the weird thing is that even though I took Kentucky to win the game and I picked them in the office pool, which I think 98% of the people picked Kentucky in office pools this year, or something absurd like that, I found myself wanting Wisconsin to win the game because I liked the way that they played so much. As the game carried along, I was kind of like, I wanted Wisconsin to win. I started to pull for Wisconsin even though I was betting against them.
You know what? I was pulling for Kentucky. There was a point where I decided, why root against perfection? And I think it was partly dealing with those kids in Cleveland. They're a much better group than I thought. Nice kids. And I expected just more attitude from them. Now there's something that happened after the last game that might lead people to believe there's a little more attitude there. But I just wanted them to win. I was not rooting against them. But once you start watching the game, I'll confess, I haven't watched as much college basketball, not as much as I used to when I covered it full time. When you start to watch teams, you start to see things. I guess if you'd watched Wisconsin all year long, it might have not been a big shock to you that they could beat this team. And I'll tell you what, watching them against Notre Dame, they showed the way. I thought that would be the best shot anyone took, and it was basically a lot of the same stuff with a better team doing it.
Yeah, I thought so too. If anything, the thing that crossed my mind, this is what Kentucky did right, by the way. When you look at, I think it's exhibit A of when kids stay in school for 4 years and they get experience and they had been there before, that helped them. Now, Kentucky has played in some big games too. It wasn't such a huge difference, like it will be, by the way, with Duke. But I think that there's something to be said for kids staying in school all 4 years, and that's what happened. You saw some of their experience come out when? Late in the game, when it really, the pressure started to get turned up there, and they had a couple of calls go against them. Then they had a couple of calls go for them, and they didn't change. Kentucky did change when those calls started to go against them. You saw them at the end of the game start to get tight, and that just, it emphasized some of the problems that they had earlier in the game.
I thought when they went up 4, and I thought, here we go. Kentucky's taking this game over the way they do. And they made all their shots in that Notre Dame game and locked down. And then, what Wisconsin answered back, like you say, a veteran game, 22 and 23-year-olds against 19-year-olds. And they didn't panic. They did the things they needed to do, ran their offense, which they're amazing, Bucky. I mean, they run their stuff no matter who's playing against them. They averaged 7.5 turnovers for the season.
What amazed me, Sully, I think as much as anything was the rebounding advantage that they had over a team that was bigger, more athletic, and didn't have Willie Cauley. And it goes back to a little bit of what we said on the last show, the way that they had to attack Wisconsin, Kentucky had to attack Wisconsin, was that they had to get after Kaminsky, even if it meant Willie Cauley, who's not very good offensively, to get him some touches inside and make Kaminsky either foul him or play defense on him or whatever. They really didn't do that. And Kaminsky came out of there with a nice clean game, 20 points, 11 boards, and a nice win.
Yeah, and I saw a little bit of that in the Notre Dame game too, that offensively, when they're not making open threes or getting open threes, now who are they? Because Stein has no offensive game. The other guys up front, the young kids are pretty athletic, but Towns was the guy.
Right.
He had to go 8 for 8 in the second half for them to win by 2 points against Notre Dame.
You know when I knew Kentucky was in trouble? When they shot 60% in the first half and they were tied. That's when I thought, uh-oh. And you know that Wisconsin went to the locker room saying, hey, these guys can't play any better than that, and we're tied with them right now. And still, it was a great game. From beginning to end, it was a great game. I didn't miss a minute of it, and I was happy for that. Now you have, first let's talk about Duke and Michigan State. You couldn't expect 20 points in that. I would have, if we would have bet on that, I would have lost that one too, because I would have taken Michigan State if you were giving me the 5.5 points, and they lost by 20.
Yeah, I didn't think it'd be a 20-point game, Tom Izzo teams, but there's a point where that kind of team kind of tops out. They could have easily been defeated in the second game of the tournament. Duke shot 24 for 40, Bucky, from 2-point range. They're just a better team with better players inside. Winslow is probably the best secondary big man in the country
really
right
good.
now. I mean, he's going to go in the top 10 of the draft the way he's playing. He's more impressive than Towns to me in some ways. He goes like 7 for 11, makes a ton of foul shots. That's an efficient offensive performance by a freshman. That's going to be tough to deal with tonight.
Let me tell you something. He is not going to be a lottery pick if his father, Ricky Winslow, who played for Houston back in the Phi Slam and Jammin' days, has his way. I don't know if you caught that, but he told USA yesterday, today's paper, that he wishes that there were 2 years for college players to give them more time to mature, to be more prepared for the NBA, and to make the college game better. So I've been all over the place on this issue, and now I'm at a point where I just think that you should be allowed to play when you're allowed to, when you can play. Even the one and done thing, I'm not for. But I also understand the other argument.
I assume Ricky Winslow has a decent job and money.
Sure.
And his kid doesn't have to worry about.
He's played 14 years in Europe.
Like
I'm sure he's
many
made
of
some
these
money.
kids, single parent families with mothers and trying to raise, and okay, great for Ricky Winslow. Why doesn't he speak the way I do and say he wishes they were in a minor league? If he wants his kid to develop as a basketball player, which it sounds like he wants, rather than, I don't hear him advocating for his kid to have a 4-year education in grad school.
Right.
Advocate for a minor league. If that's what you want, a place to guys develop as basketball players, get it out of college. I don't want to hear from Ricky Winslow.
That's what the D-League doesn't quite do it, and that's where I know we're going off the rails a little bit here, but the D-League doesn't quite do it because the salaries are so low. So they need to figure out how to raise if they're going to have that gap, and they're going to have a development league, then they need to pay players enough so they're willing to develop, right? I mean, that's basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're not going to get by. Kids aren't going to, they're not going to jump for 25, 30 grand a year.
A real D-League, like hockey minor leagues and baseball minor leagues, where they paid them salaries. And I'm not talking about the top guys that get the big money and go right to the league. The secondary guys that do need minor leagues, like some of these guys you see that come through the Bisons, they're making money. Some of them go to college, but a lot of them are drafted right out of high school, right? No one complains about baseball players at 18 years old becoming professionals. That's because there's no NCAA tournament of college baseball that generates $1 billion. Right.
Well, that's the problem.
They like having these one and dones because they're entertainers for that 1 year.
Absolutely. There's no question about it.
What's this tournament without the 3 Kentucky freshmen, without the 3 Duke freshmen? We still have the same tournament, but there's not as much of a sense that you have stars.
Right.
They use these kids.
And you know what? And here's one right here, and that is Okafor and then Kaminsky, who's on the opposite side. Those two will be going head to head. Kaminsky stays for 4 years. Okafor is likely one and done. I would imagine he's not going to stick around past this year. And if you look at it, Sully, the team that Wisconsin is right now, the team that has guys sticking around for 4 years, developing through the program, coming through the program and developing under a really good coach, is Wisconsin. Duke, at this point in the national championship game, looks more like Kentucky with 3 one-and-done players and a really good senior guard there and Quinn Cook, who really keeps it together, and that guy right there, Mike Krzyzewski, who's a great coach.
I think Duke has better offensive talent, and all due respect to Calipari, a better coach, the greatest coach in history, which I think makes them a little more dangerous as freshmen. But you're right. And basketball purists want to root for Wisconsin because it's 4-year guys, and that should be rewarded, right?
Yes.
That makes this a great matchup tonight.
It does. And you know what, too? And, we've talked about all these players. My question to you is, how do you think that Duke is going to be able to match up with Sam Decker? Because he's the wild card tonight, Sully, in this game.
I don't know how you match. I mean, they've got very athletic, good defensive guards, but his size and his quick release, he's going to get it off. He was not this hot early in the year. He came on late. He's been seen as something of a disappointment. He was like Mr. Wisconsin, their one guy who was a major, major recruit. So I think to some extent you just got to hope that his hot streak, runs out tonight.
His confidence.
Keep him off the line.
His confidence is at an all-time high. And that's what you're seeing right now. And that, I think the same can be said for that entire Wisconsin team, if not that entire Wisconsin state.
Look at them in
They
interviews.
are rolling. What?
Look at them in interviews. They're joking, laughing, having fun with the stenographer,
loose.
trying to say big words, the kind you don't know, to see if she can spell them.
That's right. I was impressed by that. Listen, I want to touch on something just before we take a break. Andrew Harrison blurted out the N-word along with another expletive that was directed at Frank Kaminsky during the postgame. By the way, he didn't shake hands with Wisconsin's players on his way out the door. What did you make of that? It's just another example of this word coming out in public in a high-profile way.
I'm more upset by the poor sportsmanship, not shaking hands, frankly. Kids need to know that that's unacceptable. The N-word's unacceptable, too. But this, I feel almost unequipped to deal with it because there's this idea that if you're an African American, it's okay for you to say it. I think if it's the most egregious word in the English language, no one should say it. That's my position. If that seems old school, so be it. I'm old school.
Sounds good. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to look at the Masters. First, Sully, we have to do our trivia question, which you did not know. I'll have you know. Everybody else know. Frank Kaminsky was Bo Ryan's 4th consensus AP All-American. That includes the first and second teams. Which Badger never made the AP first or second team? We will have the answer when we come back.